Hello, Burnsville High School AP students. We are going to talk a little bit about the 1920s, chapter 23. I have the book over here, so I'll talk through that a little bit, but also through these slides to kind of help direct you a little bit in studying chapter 23. So initially the question here is, what would you call the aughts? That's what, it's not the teens, it's not, the zeros. So what would you call that time period before? And then kind of moving into what's happening in the 1920s. The 1920s in your textbook is outlined as, it starts out with post-war prosperity and its price, the new mass culture, resistance to modernity, and then the state, the economy, and business, and promises postponed. So we'll kind of go through a little bit of each of those topics, and it's probably really distracting that I'm circling back and forth on my chair. But at any rate, let's talk about these slides first. So the economy soars mostly. As we're coming out of the aughts, the zeros and the teens, we have this kind of prosperity that people are seeing in the United States as a result of kind of our experience in World War I. We have big businesses that thrive, as it says on the slide right here. We have the invention of the automobile and the development of it, I should say, not just the invention, but also the development of it so it's more affordable. Entertainment is changing, as you're seeing in Demon Rum. Films are becoming more popular. Radio is becoming huge. Consumerism kind of takes over the country and really brings a lot of people to the plate thinking that they need to have these consumer goods and these material goods. And then aviation. So we kind of expand our global presence by having some people who are experimenting with the earliest forms of flight. So it's kind of exciting. So the economy, we find this prosperity that happens through the 1920s. And so I'm just going to flip over to the book here and talk about it a little bit. The chapter starts out talking about movies, which I think are really interesting because it was kind of an escape from what was happening. They talk about how the movies evoke the pleasures of leisure, consumption, and personal freedom. So it kind of changed the way that people had their value system and what they valued in culture. So this would be kind of part of the second section. But post-war prosperity and its price, we wanted to return to normalcy. We wanted to get over this fighting. We had a situation, in the World War where we joined last minute, ended up helping things. And afterwards, we kind of refocused on the way that our attitudes were back home. And after this post-war experience, well, anyways, I'll get to that later. Okay, so the second industrial revolution, we have innovations, with the assembly line and Henry Ford, with different inventions that are happening. We've got, Thomas Edison hard at work, Alexander Graham Bell. So all of these people are kind of bringing this new sense of technology to our country, and it's allowing manufacturing to kind of take off and skyrocket. So we have these goods that are available for other people. And also it's incorporating unskilled workers, which is what we're having an influx of with not only the migration from the south to the north of African Americans, but increased immigration as well. Modern corporation talks a little bit about big businesses. Those that were successful were ones that diversified. So it says, successful corporations were the ones that led in three key areas: the integration of production and distribution, product diversification, and expansion of industrial research. The idea with this expansion of big business, I should say, was that we're going to want to kind of touch base again with labor unions. It's what's happening with labor unions, and challenge those that are in power. Large employers are moving forward in trying to kind of capitalize on their wealth and their growth, and they wanted to improve worker well-being and morale, under this idea of we're gonna quash the unions by saying, hey, people like to work here, leave us alone. And that was kind of the idea of welfare capitalism that it talks about on the very bottom of page 805. Some of these were stock purchase plans. As you see in the video, Henry Ford had dance parties and social things like that. And part of that was to kind of put his claws into his workers and make sure that they weren't drinking and doing things that were out of the ordinary, not out of the ordinary, but against what he was looking for. The idea of the open shop where they wouldn't be compelled to join a union. The auto age, we have Henry Ford really kind of putting out some interesting ideas with this whole assembly line thing. The Model T and the Model A, and you saw some of those cars in the video that we watched. And as we have this expansion in automobiles, we also have the expansion of suburbs and cities, and also the infrastructure of our country. And this is going to slow down for a little bit with World War II, but we start, now that we have automobiles, people don't have to live right in the city and right in these kind of densely populated areas. So we move out to homes where consumerism increases. So it's kind of like this cyclical thing that's happening in the country in terms of the economy. We have prosperity, so people can afford to move away. They get a car. And then as a result of that, they have increased consumerism because now they want things for their home. So one of the things that the mostly refers to in the parentheses at the top of the slide here is the idea that there were people in the United States in the 1920s that weren't prosperous, and that would be primarily agriculture and ailing industries. Farmers, farmers decreased after World War I. Okay, good. More farming. And also at the same time that farming is decreasing, we have a lot of coal mines that are kind of going out of business, not out of business, but their production is decreasing with kind of the growing popularity of oil and, the idea of electricity. So coal is a less important source. And strikes. We had a lot of coal strikes, so that was bad. Railroad tracks started to slow down as automobiles and trucks began to be produced and be used more readily, so the need for railroad tracks slowed, and so railroads decreased. And then also the textile industry shifted from the Northeast to kind of the South Carolina, North Carolina, Piedmont region down on the coast there. There we go. New ideas are flourishing, and you'll see a little bit of this in the video that we're talking about. Women have more independence, and the guy talks about how, women were having ideas, and they were causing you to, to think about things, and they wouldn't just sit back and be pretty, So women are coming to the forefront of a lot of things that are happening. The Black Exodus, where they left from the South and moved to the North. Things like the lack of jobs, the droughts and things, the boll weevil, God forbid that little bugger, the boll weevil, and floods wrecked agriculture in the South. And so if you're on a sharecropping, type plantation, or if you have an agricultural job, you're out of luck. So a lot of people migrated to the North, and out of this comes the Harlem Renaissance, which is kind of a rebirth of African American culture, primarily in literature, but a lot of music as well. And so that develops in Harlem. And it's not just African Americans. There's a mix of people from the West Indies, from Puerto Rico, from, different areas that settle in Harlem. And if you know anything about Manhattan, it's kind of a long rectangular island. And then in the center of it is Central Park. So there's like the center of Manhattan is Central Park. And then right to the north of Central Park is where Harlem is, just for geographical reference. Anyways, African Americans coming to the North. Racism was still around. We had segregated units in World War I. It was equal for them to fight, but not to be equals in the country afterwards. So that was problematic. We still had a lot of race issues. And then prohibition. It tempers drinking, but it doesn't solve the issue behind it. So we're learning a little bit more about prohibition in the Demon Rum video that we're watching. And there we go. One of the things to remember about women is that they still had low-paying jobs. There were still race riots. We had lynchings in Duluth, in Minnesota. And then the last one there, organized crime ends up taking over. There's an increase in organized crime as a result of prohibition. I'm looking in the book here to kind of match what we're talking about, and we have the new mass culture movie made America, So Charlie Chaplin. And then after Charlie Chaplin, they got into talkies. Interesting that the first silent film that won an Academy Award was this year, 2012. Prior to that, it was 1929, I think. I don't remember. But it was the first year that the Academy Awards came out. So they moved into talkies, radio broadcasting, daily news, new forms of journalism. They're talking about how there's going to be more picture-related news, and tabloids. So tabloids kind of rose out of this time period. I don't know whether that's something we should talk about or not. Advertising, we have a lot of things that are changing in advertising. Prior to the 1920s, advertising was a lot of reading about a product, and in the 1920s they changed to a lot of pictures about the products. Phonograph and recording industry, radio, sports and celebrity, we've got baseball.